Hello, I want to welcome you to our webinar today, Benchmarking and Measurement, Understanding Your Supply Chain. This is Tad Radzinski, and I'll be conducting the webinar today. As we normally do in our series of webinars, we're going to be running through a series of slides, and then we'll be taking questions at the end. So if you do have questions as we move through this, please type them into the question pane, and I'll be answering them at the end. And it gives you an opportunity to get more information specific to what you're interested in or specific to your situation. And I really do welcome the questions because it does make the webinar more specific and interesting for everyone. For those of you who have been following our webinar series, this is the second in this series, and again we're focusing on benchmarking and measurement. And this whole series is really focused in on developing sustainable supply chain initiatives, understanding the sustainability of your supply chain. And if you recall from our webinar last month, we did focus in on understanding the drivers for the requirements for sustainable supply chains, some of the aspects and needs of various organizations in gathering information, assessing the supply chain, trying to get a handle on what's involved with getting that information and utilizing it to help with driving your sustainability program. A big focus of ours is to make sustainability just part of everyone's business strategy, and if you are a manufacturer, your supply chain is really critical to helping you do that. If you're not a manufacturer and you're just an organization that is focused on services or other aspects, then understanding your supply chain is really important to help you with your sustainable purchasing programs, and also to help you drive sustainability much further than within your borders, and basically engage all your stakeholders. So today we're going to be talking about how we can understand the supply chain and some of the keys to integrating this information to make more sustainable products in the future. So this webinar series is building up to our seminar that we're going to be doing on April 20th, 2016 here in Philadelphia at the Hub in the Cirrus Center. And the theme of this is strengthening the links in your supply chain. And like I said earlier, this is definitely focused on supply chain sustainability and getting suppliers engaged and communicating with you to really allow you as an organization to enhance and expand your sustainability initiatives, whether it's for sustainable product innovation or even to help you drive your sustainable purchasing programs and things like that. And this is very exciting because for 2 years in a row we've done a seminar on integrating sustainability into your business strategy, just making it part of the way you do business. Those seminars were extremely successful, and the attendees as well as other people have suggested that we really do something around supply chain. So I'm hoping that all of you can put this on your calendars, and we'd really love to have you join us at this. It is a great workshop. It is designed for not only you to come along, but bring some of your key suppliers, and then we're going to work with you to set up sustainable supply chain programs with those folks in the workshop activities. So the big question is, how do you measure sustainability in your supply chain? Like I said earlier, if you're a manufacturer, supply chain is critical because you're basically sourcing raw materials, parts, ingredients from different suppliers that are making these things for you. If you are an organization that is not a manufacturer, then obviously understanding your supply chain is important on who you're sourcing from and the different aspects that could impact the overall sustainability of your organization. For example, our company is a consulting and engineering office, and our supply chain consists of our cleaning service, our computer support staff and service. We also do have quite a bit of office supplies that we use over time. We have a travel agency we work with. So those organizations are important to us, and part of what we do is we try to understand, we basically have policies and procedures on how we have our office cleaned and who we work with, and we require specific information from some of these suppliers, especially around the office supplies. So that's one example of how we can measure sustainability in the supply chain. But also, if you're looking at manufacturing and you're sourcing from many different suppliers, then it's a different ballgame. You got to start to get a lot more information, especially if you're producing products or materials or that kind of thing. So this is a common theme that I talk about just in about everything I teach. Measurement, if you can't measure it, you can't manage it. And definitely we strongly encourage everyone, whether you're understanding how your building operates or you're trying to understand your supply chain, you can utilize spreadsheets or other software to track information. So imagine if you're a manufacturer and you have several hundred suppliers or even several thousand suppliers, and we do work with a lot of companies that have that situation. It can be very daunting on how you're going to get information from them, how you're going to track that information, how you're going to collect it. So there are spreadsheets available. There also is supplier auditing softwares that are out there to help you collect data and information that are very useful. And by collecting this information, it definitely allows you to do data analysis and trending and really start to use this to look at opportunities, whether it's finding sources of lost or waste or cost or different things like that. Very important to be able to measure and track these things on a periodic basis. By tracking this information, we do what we call benchmarking, and really what that is just using data to really understand the current state of the supply chain. So most of the companies we're working with right now are just establishing their supply chain sustainability initiatives. So they're baselining where their suppliers are. They might be sending out questionnaires to try to get an understanding of what's going on with the suppliers' sustainability initiatives in-house. Are they measuring greenhouse gases? Are they managing water, saving energy? But it also gets much deeper than that in trying to understand what is in the materials and products that are being supplied. What type of chemicals, where are they sourced from, is there any recycled content? And as you can see on this spreadsheet here, this would be just an example of driving something down the supply chain using a bill of material for something that they might provide your supplier. So over here would be the product or the part number, the weight, assembly quantity, material. Really important aspect here is the supplier and their location, and then just some general information. This is just some examples of things you could be asking for. For example, is there recycled content? Is there any kind of conflict minerals? There's all kinds of things that could be asked for in these spreadsheets, but this is just one way to collect information. And we have found that if you are a manufacturer looking back at your bill of materials or your recipes or ingredient lists or whatever, to try to start with that is a really helpful step. And then getting that information in your first round of collection is how you start to benchmark performance. If you are making something, it is critical to know the materials used in your products. And it is interesting to me that we work with a lot of manufacturers, and you would think that they would have a really good understanding of the materials that are utilized in their product, of the chemicals that are utilized, but oftentimes they don't really have a good handle on that. They're not quite clear on it. So starting with that bill of materials, and as you can see here, there's a nice example of this Lego bill of materials. We're all pretty familiar with that, I'm sure, but getting a bill of materials together and being able to go back to your suppliers. And again, this probably sounds pretty straightforward, but imagine if you're a company that has 3,000 different products or parts or materials that you can provide. That's a lot of bill of materials, it's a lot of information, and it's a lot to collect. So being able to effectively do that in a streamlined manner is going to be really critical. The other thing that's really starting to happen, and this has been driven by LEED version 4 and also some requirements now from different corporations trying to understand chemical ingredients within products, getting down to that chemical abstract registry number, going back to your supplier to say, okay, you're providing us this metallic part, and that's really great, but we really need to know what are the chemical abstract numbers of all the different materials and chemicals within this particular part you're supplying to us. So that's a really good source of information, and as there's movement towards material and ingredient disclosure, chemical requirements from corporations, etc., using that CAS number is going to be a valuable tool. There's also the ability to get some information off of material safety data sheets or SDS sheets, and those definitely will provide some information, but again, they're usually a little bit limited. So we're finding that that's a good starting point, but using these CAS numbers and asking the suppliers to provide down to that level is very helpful. One important thing when you're trying to understand what's happening in your supply chain, this is basically a roadmap to mapping your supply chain. First thing is knowing who your suppliers are. I can guarantee there's going to be at least a few people in the organization that are going to know your suppliers. If you are a manufacturer, you're going to definitely be working with your purchasing and logistics teams, and I'm sure if it's a big organization, there's going to be multiple numbers of those people that are probably working with different products and different suppliers. So you're going to want to get them on your team right away, and they're going to help you identify who these suppliers are. And then based on that first step of getting a good handle on who the suppliers are, you can develop a supply chain questionnaire. We're going to talk about that in a few minutes here. Inventorying the suppliers, one thing that I mean by that is if you have many products that you're making, you want to be able to get a handle on if one supplier might be providing materials or parts or ingredients for multiple different products. And that's a good thing if you can find that, because that helps to cut down the number of questionnaires you have to develop, the number of people you have to reach out to. And then by getting that information together, next step as part of your sustainability initiative within your company, you should have done a materiality assessment where you understand what are your biggest environmental and social challenges. You can do that by running a life cycle assessment of your products and really getting a handle on what parts or materials are driving your impacts. From the social side, a source of information for that could be if you are a supplier to someone like a Walmart or a Target or some of these other retailers, they've done work with the Sustainability Consortium that's identified KPIs or key performance indicators that include both environmental and social. That's another source of information to try to identify what your key issues are. We really want the companies we work with to understand what's driving sustainability for them, what's important to them as an organization, and that does include looking at risks, looking at what are critical to you as a business, and part of that is pulled in here as you're mapping and understanding your supply chain. Really important also, once you benchmark and baseline your supply chain, you really want to strive for continuous improvement with them, get them reporting on an annual basis, get them involved, getting them to come to trainings with you or providing training at national supply chain meetings or whatever your company does. And keeping in mind that, again, if you're not a manufacturer, you can definitely do all this in your organization. I strongly recommend it, of really understanding who is supplying to you. Like I said, if it's cleaning service, office supplies, computer services, whatever you're doing, you do have the ability through your sustainable purchasing program to map that and push the sustainability down to that level as well. On the example here, we talk about New Balance shoe company who worked to reduce its supply chain, and that's actually been something I've been seeing happening quite a bit with our different manufacturers that we work with. They're learning that it's really difficult to manage many different suppliers, so being able to identify those suppliers that are, number one, providing the best quality, the best reliability, but also looking at those suppliers from a sustainability perspective is another means of how you can maybe reduce and trim that number down. So getting that handled is going to be really valuable. It's going to help you better control your cost, better control how you're managing your operations, and make it more streamlined when you are assessing the sustainability of these organizations that are providing parts, materials, raw materials, etc. to you. And think about it, many manufacturers are sourcing from what we call low-cost countries, so being able to trim down that number is very helpful, and really then makes you work with the best organizations out there from all aspects that are critical to your business. So in our efforts to understand our supply chain. We talked about this last month in regard to what's driving things, and I mentioned last month about how Walmart has a program where they recognize sustainability leaders that were able to complete questionnaires around the KPIs for their products that were developed by the Sustainability Consortium. So it's important to really take a look at who you're working for, what the expectations are of the organizations you are providing parts or products or materials to, or even services, and really taking a hard look at that. And we definitely know that data collection and analysis is going to be critical for not only understanding the impacts of your products and services, but it's also critical to understand the material and chemical ingredients within the products. And life cycle assessment and material ingredient reporting are those things that are going to continue to move forward here. And this is actually something that just has been occurring. This is a study and information put out by BNA. And basically what this says is, both Walmart and Target have said that suppliers who do not help us with stocking sustainable merchandise will be left behind. And for the future, there were 3 key topics that both of these companies were going to be looking at: priority chemicals and disclosure of chemical content, waste and packaging, and then basically educating and changing consumer behavior. So think about it: priority chemicals and disclosure of chemical content. The only way you're going to know that information is to be reaching back to your supply chain. Same thing with waste and packaging. If you are a manufacturer of products, controlling and redesigning and really evaluating your packaging and reducing waste goes all the way back to your supply chain as well. So 2 key things you're going to want to keep in mind, as you're working. And again, these are just 2 organizations, but when you have big corporations like this setting trends, you're going to see others that follow. So definitely keep that in mind as you're focusing in on your own sustainability initiatives, both internally and with the supply chain. So here's an example of some questions you could be asking your suppliers, and oftentimes, we're working on products and we're really trying to understand what are the sustainable attributes. And attributes are both single attributes and then there's multi-attributes. So by asking a broad range of questions, we can zero in and get a good feeling for what's happening with the single attributes of products, for example, recycle content. But asking additional questions like this really gets us to understand also what is the aspects of other green aspects of the product, or what are the sustainable aspects of the manufacturing process from our suppliers, because it's really great to source a green material, but you want to make sure that it's coming from a manufacturer that's also doing good things and not having significant environmental impacts. So again, some of these questions, things like, does your product contain either pre or post-consumer recycled content? Do you track energy usage and greenhouse gases? This is something you can ask of a supplier that's making parts for you, or your office supply company, or your cleaning company. Any of these things could be asked. This is a really good one too. If you think about it, most suppliers to you are going to have suppliers to them. So for example, if you're getting someone that's making metallic parts for you, whether it's brass or steel or bronze or nickel or whatever, they're most likely going to be getting the raw materials from someone, whether it's, for brass, it would be bar stock if you're manufacturing it into something, or brass sheets or whatever. They're going back to some supplier to get that, and then they're going to turn that into the parts they sell to you. Same thing with a cleaning company. They're going to be using certain chemicals to clean your building, so you're going to want to know what they're using. So all of these things can be asked, and you can see here we have things that cover questions around conflict minerals, and then Prop 65, even asking about getting information on the CAS numbers for the various chemicals. When it comes to data collection, we strongly recommend a baselining. So first round of data collection with the manufacturers using those spreadsheets and questionnaires. Definitely want to do it on an annual basis after that. And the reason for that is there is a lot of supplier variability out there. For example, suppliers come and go, contracts end up expiring and they don't get renewed, or you find someone who's going to provide something at a lower cost. Oftentimes there's new product development activities going on within a company, and they're going to basically change materials and switch suppliers. And many companies have multiple suppliers that they get the same part from, and that reduces their risk. So being able to do that is going to be really important. And when you are collecting data to ensure your success, I'm going to recommend you're, definitely training people. You're definitely, if you're sending these questionnaires to companies in China or Vietnam, you're going to definitely want to make sure that they're translated and you have someone in those locations that can help to educate the folks that have to fill out these questionnaires and that kind of thing. So definitely recommend it annually, and that kind of thing can be done with either individually where you're sending it out as the company, or you're hiring a third-party auditor, supply chain auditor, to help you with that. And we have worked with companies like Green Circle Certified that definitely can do those supply chain audits. So this is going to be gearing us up for the next round. So getting all this information, really important, allows you then to conduct your life cycle assessments to really assess the overall sustainability of your suppliers. What is their carbon footprint? What is the water they're using? And then you can utilize this in your sustainable product innovation programs. And it's really great to conduct an LCA or to understand material ingredients and chemicals within products, but very valuable then to take that information and use it for a sustainable product innovation process. And what we do is we integrate that right into the stage gate or new product development process that many companies utilize to develop new or improved products. And it is basically using life cycle thinking with various sustainability tools to make products greener or less impactful. This is one way that we do this, and we're going to talk a lot more about this in our next webinar, which is coming up in January, where we're looking at using a sustainable product scorecard. And if you notice in this particular example of a scorecard here, we're collecting information from our suppliers. Notice that we say right here that chemical information requirements are integrated into supplier specifications, all chemicals and materials identified and evaluated. Very important aspect. And then utilizing LCA data. So being able to get that information from your suppliers is going to be really important and useful. So a couple tips to institutionalize a sustainable supply chain. Definitely move forward on identifying and evaluating your suppliers. Maybe if it's a daunting task where you've got hundreds or thousands of suppliers, maybe you start out with a pilot program and you do a few of them to understand how well your program could work as far as the data collection, what you really need to measure. Then once you're getting that data and information, you're going to want to get that information from them and learn more about what they're doing, and then right into the supplier specifications and contracts. Number one, the need for them to submit information to you on an annual basis, whether it's chemical abstract numbers or recycled content data, or even their overall sustainability program reporting information. Build that right into the contracts and the specifications, and that's going to make sure that you're getting that for the long term. And then you don't have to worry about it because it's controlled by a contract. They need to submit it. You train them on how to do that, and then they're going to be reporting that information to you on a regular basis. And the first year or so of getting a sustainable supply chain data collection program together is definitely a lot of work, but after that you want to make it as streamlined, as simple as possible, and by doing that, putting in the contracts is really helpful. I can't emphasize enough the importance of training, so definitely keep that in mind as you move forward. So like I said, just a reminder, we're building up here to our big seminar that we're doing on April 20th, 2016. That's going to be a really awesome event, and like I said, the goal of that is to have you all come, but I want you to also think about bringing some of your key suppliers, getting them at the table with you, and then we can help you set up programs and processes to help you analyze and work with your suppliers over the long term in a streamlined fashion. So we'll be doing that in the workshops. Other thing, we're going to be doing our next webinar on January 14th. The title of that is Advancing Product Innovation, How to Utilize Your Stronger Supply Chain. So we're going to build upon what we talked a little bit today about integrating that information you're collecting and really rolling it into a sustainable product innovation program or a sustainable purchasing program within your organization to really drive things from the supply chain perspective and enhance your overall sustainability program, to really help drive your business strategy. As always, any comments, questions, please email me. And for now, we do have about 5 or 6 minutes here. I'm going to take a few questions that we've received from the audience. So the first question I have here is, what tips can you give me on how to get suppliers to provide information, especially in low-cost countries? Yeah, this is really a pretty challenging thing. We do have situations where when we are working with our clients to get this information, usually the folks in China or Vietnam or other quote-unquote low-cost countries, number one, they're going to tell you what they think you want to hear. But we also have situations where we find that oftentimes there's a language barrier, or there's a situation where they don't totally understand what we're asking for, and that kind of thing. So like I said before, making sure you translate the questionnaires into whatever the native language is, doing some training and education, preferably with someone who's a representative of the company you're working with, who's actually located in that country, that can then help to answer questions, or creating a communication pipeline to get them to provide that information is really critical. The ultimate way, though, to get that data is to make it part of the contracts and the specifications that you write out. Once that's embedded in there, then they have to do it, or that gives you a grounds for not using them anymore, or basically having a legal way of requiring them to get that information to you. So that's some of the tips I can give you there. We have another question. It says, how do you get things validated to verify information is correct? So I think what this question means is, great, we just asked our suppliers to provide information to us, but how do we know they're telling us the truth? What we typically look for is if they have any third-party certifications of those claims. So say you were asking, a supplier to give you information on their carbon footprint or the energy consumption, or even if they have a sustainability program. If they had a third-party validated audit of either their carbon footprint data or their sustainable manufacturing practices or things like that, that would be very helpful. And that is definitely a good way to do that. And we've even heard from folks in different organizations that are collecting this information on a regular basis that it's great that they get it, but they don't really know it's true. So using an auditor, like someone like a Green Circle Certified, or using a third-party certification company that's validating and certifying these claims and information is really helpful to make sure that is correct. The next question I have suppliers been receptive to providing data annually without it being written in the specs? Would you recommend suppliers update companies as they have updates to their materials, not just annually? I think that's definitely a very good thing. And again, if you get suppliers trained and educated, they're definitely going to be more open to providing this information on an annual basis. And even if it's not written in the specs, that does take a while, because most companies, once you establish a contract with a supplier, it's usually, if not annual, it's going to be a multi-year contract, and it's usually hard to amend them. The time to get that written in there is when you are updating those contracts and get it embedded there. So, but I do think that once you get your suppliers trained and educated that this is important, you definitely want to have them reporting annually. And I would say too that you would want to educate them that if they do have any changes, that they are required to communicate that to you when it happens, and not wait till the end of the year. That is a good thing to do. And ideally, if you can get a nice platform set up for easy communication of that, whether it's some kind of software program, or you have a third-party auditor that's helping you collect that data, some means of getting that information directly to you is going to be very valuable. So that's the questions I have time to answer for right now. I'm going to say thank you all for joining, and I really look forward to seeing you the next webinar, which is January 14th after the holidays. If we don't connect before then, have a great holidays coming up with Thanksgiving and the Christmas holidays. So look forward to your questions, look forward to your feedback, and especially look forward to all of you taking a hard look at our seminar coming up, and seeing if we can get you signed up for that, and coming along to really take this to the next level. Thank you, and have a great day.